4 degrees C, which is about 55 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
Hey guys, Button
Ground
25
winds are out of the
watching
northwest
an
at 4 meters per second, which is well below the limit. And upper level winds are within limits at all altitudes. So the weather is well within constraints, and currently we are working no issues that would prevent us from an on-time launch of Amazonas 5. Now, let's take a look at the mission flight profile for the Proton 5 payload into geosynchronous transfer orbit, or GTO. The 3-stage Proton M launch vehicle will lift off from Pad 39 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Proton M booster will inject the Breeze M upper stage along with the Amazonas 5 spacecraft into a suborbital trajectory in the first 10 minutes of flight, after which the Breeze M will utilize a 5-burn mission design over the ensuing 9 hours to finally separate the satellite into the target GTO orbit.
So this is a Proton return to flight, basically. After some engines problems.
The 191-foot or 58.2 meter tall ILS Proton is a 3-stage rocket with a restartable upper stage. The Proton's first 3 stages propel the orbital unit into a suborbital trajectory during the first 10 minutes following launch. After that, the Breeze M takes the spacecraft through the parking, intermediate, transfer, and geotransfer orbits during the remaining 9 hours of the mission. The liftoff phase begins with the ignition of the 6 powerful first-stage engines that generate 2.4 million pounds of thrust at sea level. As the ILS Proton lifts off from its launch pad, it immediately executes a roll maneuver to align its pitch axis with the flight launch azimuth of 61.3 degrees as it travels in an east-northeast direction across Kazakhstan towards the Pacific Ocean. The first stage engines fire for about 2 minutes, during which time the ILS Proton experiences maximum dynamic pressure. Soon after that, the first stage separates from the second stage. As the second stage ignites, 540,000 pounds of thrust is generated for 3.5 minutes, and then stage 2 separates, allowing the third stage engine to fire and generate 131,000 pounds of thrust for 4 minutes. Soon after third stage ignition, the payload fairing, consisting of 2 symmetrical payload fairing halves, separates and is jettisoned from the launch vehicle. Having traveled from Baikonur to eastern Russia at 51.5 degrees north latitude, Stage 3 separates from the orbital unit, which is now moving at about 7,300 meters per second, or 4.5 miles per second relative velocity in a suborbital trajectory.
At
this point in the mission, the Breeze M upper stage, designed to inject payloads into a variety of orbits, takes over. The first of 5 Breeze M burns occurs about 1.5 minutes after the third stage separation.
It's because they don't want to be dropping
The purpose of this first Breeze M burn is to achieve a low Earth circular parking orbit of 170 kilometers. And spans from Siberia to Russia's east coast. 52 minutes after the main engine cutoff of the first burn, or MECO-1, the second Breeze M burn begins, placing the spacecraft into an elliptical orbit called the intermediate orbit. Apogee is increased to 5,000 kilometers, perigee to 270 kilometers, and inclination slightly reduced to 50.3 degrees. This nearly 18-minute burn spans from the South Atlantic 800 miles east of Rio de Janeiro to Libya. In a 19.8-minute sequence, the third Breeze M burn is executed. The auxiliary propellant tank, or APT, is jettisoned, and the fourth Breeze M burn is completed, resulting in the transfer orbit, a more elliptical orbit. In the transfer orbit, the apogee is greatly increased to more closely match geosynchronous altitude. The third and fourth Breeze M burns take the spacecraft from the South Pacific, 200 miles west of Chile, to 300 miles west of Morocco. The Breeze M performs various attitude maneuvers during the coast phases between burns, allowing the spacecraft to be exposed to the warming rays of the sun at pre-programmed solar illumination angles, designed to meet power and thermal requirements. About 5 hours later, the orbital unit performs a large plane change maneuver during the fifth and final Breeze M burn. The fifth Breeze M burn lasts approximately 8 minutes. About 12 minutes after MECO-5, the spacecraft is separated from the Breeze M, having reached its targeted GTO orbit near the east coast of Africa.
I'm sorry, I don't know what.
The total mission duration is 9 hours and 12 minutes in length.
Stay up to date on the status of the mission by visiting the ILS website, ilslaunch.com, by following us on Twitter, and by liking us on Facebook. Now a greeting from ILS President Kirk Peischer on some of the significant Proton milestone over its history with today's launch of Amazonas 5.
Well, the Amazonas 5 launch will actually have two significant milestones for ILS. First and foremost, it'll be our 95th commercial launch of ILS Proton, following our inaugural launch back in 1996 of the Aster 1F spacecraft for SES. And on top of that, we will also have our 30th launch of Space Systems Loral-built satellite, which is also a significant milestone, and one that we're very proud of, having been able to work with the Space Systems Loral for many, many years, working with many customers to deliver satellites.
124.
There's a lot of people that we need to really thank. The whole team at ILS, from contract conception to launch, it touches every individual in this company, and every individual has a contribution to making it a success. So I have to thank the entire ILS team. As far as Hispasat, I definitely want to give personal thanks to Carlos Espinas and Antonio Abad for their trust in ILS and their commitment to seeing the Amazonas 5 launch through. It is definitely a pleasure to work with both of those gentlemen and professionals. Krinichev also needs to be thanked. They're an integral role ensuring that we get a reliable launch vehicle and launch team assembled to go launch. We also have Space Systems Loral, who continuously are professionals working with ILS to make sure that our launches go off flawlessly.
John, you're an engineer and former program director for ILS, a veteran of the launch industry with over 60 satellites launched. Can you tell us about some of the tests and checks and behind-the-scenes activities that go on at the launch site?
At any launch site, it's really three stories that are woven together to create a successful launch. The first is obviously the payload, satellite payload. It arrives at the launch site, is unpacked, tested, fueled, and prepared for mating to the launch vehicle. The second story is the launch vehicle, including the Proton booster, the BreezeM upper stage, the payload fairing, adapter, and separation system. In parallel with the spacecraft, the launch vehicle is also shipped to the launch site, unpacked, assembled, tested, and prepared for mating with the spacecraft. The pieces start coming together at joint operations, which commences about 14 to 15 days prior to launch. We start taking all these various pieces of flight hardware and start assembling them into the Integrated Launch Vehicle, or ILV. The last story is the tale of the launch complex. After each launch, it is refurbished, retested, recertified, and for some launches, customized to meet the unique requirements of the mission. This can take various lengths of time depending on the satellite, but can be reduced to as little as 2.5 weeks when we have a lot of experience with the satellite platform, such as the SSL 1300 spacecraft bus. That is why we are aiming for the next launch for Proton by the end of September. The ILV is installed on the launch pad at L-4, L-5 days, and at this point the three stories have come together for what we hope is a storybook ending on launch day.
The launch location for all Proton missions is the historic Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is the site where the first satellite, Sputnik 1, took the first orbital spaceflight in October 1957, almost 60 years ago. Now let's take a closer look at the launch facility.
The Baikonur Cosmodrome is the world's first and largest operational space launch facility and has been in operation since 1955. It is located in the Kazakhstan desert, approximately 2,100 kilometers or 1,300 miles southeast of Moscow. The Cosmodrome is large and extends about 100 miles from east to west and 55 miles from north to south.
I'm pretty sure that's the N1 test they were showing there.
Under Roscosmos, the Russian Federal Space Agency, Baikonur remains a busy spaceport with numerous commercial, military, and scientific missions being launched. Baikonur Cosmodrome is under a long-term lease from the Republic of Kazakhstan.
Now we're going to take a chronological look at the Amazonas 5 journey to launch. John, let's walk our viewers through the process of getting the launches aboard, ready for Proton.
Well, the first part is the assembly and design, assembly and test of the satellite at the spacecraft manufacturer's facility. And in this case, at the Palo Alto, where the SSL factory is located.
Antonov.
Then it's shipped to the launch site, usually on an Antonov 124, and then unpacked
and
sent on a rail car to our processing facility. As I talked about earlier, once it's been fully tested, it's then started to mate it to the BreezeM and encapsulated and made it to the Proton launch vehicle. After encapsulation, one of our traditions is to sign the payload fairing by the entire launch team.
Yeah, you can see all the signatures there. Well, to be honest, the better thing would be to sign the Breeze M or something.
Just want to remind our viewers we're a little over 10 minutes to launch.
Okay. So it's going to be roughly 25. Oh, come on. Give me a minute, I'm going to try to actually go to the ILS website.
Sent
maybe
by rail over to the Breeze M fueling facility.
Okay, let's just see if this helps. Okay, I think this is a bit back from YouTube, so sorry about that.
After encapsulation, one of our traditions is to sign the payload fairing by the entire launch team.
Get to that point. Because this is roughly where we're on the issue of webcast, so
Just want to remind our viewers we're a little over 10 minutes to launch.
continue from. So a US flag on a Proton. A US flag on a Soviet-designed rocket.
Once the integrated launch vehicle is assembled in Hall 111, it's transferred to an erector transporter where it's sent by rail over to the Breeze M fueling facility to load the low-pressure tanks with hydrazine and NTO.
I'm sorry, you're rolling that whole thing out by rail. That's amazing. Think of how precise they have to be. Train simulator, do this! It's a short run and you have to move very slowly. But to be fair, it would not. Like, you know, turn around, park. I think it takes like 20-30 minutes to haul it out.
After Breeze M fueling is complete, it's rolled to the launch pad promptly at 6:30 a.m. in the morning.
I'm presuming that's due to the fact that that's sort of the same time Gagarin's vehicle was rolled out. I wouldn't be willing to bet on it. Do they mention how long the rail journey is? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But seriously, Rail's Train Simulator, do this, come on! It'd be fucking amazing. And also, if not just for that, just to be able to mess around with the free roam and just be like... Like, I'm not saying force people to sit through that thing being erected. It's basically just... And also just be able to have like a TGV with a proton strapped to the back.
Once the vehicle is placed vertically on the launch pad, the mobile service tower is rolled up where it provides services and access to the integrated launch vehicle up until launch day.
So that train just buggers off, I presume? So, T-minus?
Okay, we're a little over 7 minutes to launch. Hispasat, headquartered in Madrid, Spain, distributes more than 1,250 television and radio channels through its powerful fleet of satellites and is a key driver for the Spanish aerospace industry.
Hispasat, the leading satellite operator in Latin America, launches Amazonas 5 to support the growth of Latin American countries by means of space telecommunications and strengthen its presence in the region, which is currently experiencing significant growth in the demand for audiovisual and connectivity services.
América Latina es uno de los ejes fundamentales en la estrategia de Hispasat, un mercado con 625 millones de personas en el que el satélite es muy relevante para las telecomunicaciones y que ofrece muchas oportunidades para un operador como nosotros. Hispasat ha adquirido ya una gran experiencia y reconocimiento en la región. Fuimos pioneros en desplegar allí capacidad en banda Ka a bordo del Amazonas 3 y conocemos de primera mano las necesidades de los clientes latinoamericanos. Gracias a este know-how, el diseño del Amazonas 5, un satélite dedicado por entero a América Latina, se adecúa plenamente a la demanda de este mercado y contribuirá a hacer aún más atractiva nuestra oferta de soluciones y servicios.
Hispasat satellites will operate the Amazonas 5 from Brazil. With coverage over Central and South America, it will provide high-quality DTH services, enabling audiovisual service providers to broadcast 500 new channels. This way, the satellite will strengthen the 61 degrees west position as the leading orbital position in television broadcasting in Latin America, and will be key to definitely consolidating high-definition television and promoting 4K technology in the region. Moreover, Amazonas 5 incorporates a multi-spot payload which will be able to provide connectivity services to more than 500,000 people. The Ka band with high-powered concentrated beams improves satellite connectivity solutions thanks to its greater capacity and lower cost with respect to traditional frequency bands. This will enable the Amazonas 5 to provide competitive and efficient satellite internet services to operators in the region, as well as cellular backhaul services for the deployment of 3G, LTE, and even 5G networks in areas which the coverage does not currently extend.
Well, actually I have. But
Amazonas 5 will also help reduce the digital divide through the development of government projects. Amazonas 5 is Hispasat's third satellite, designed, manufactured and tested at the Space Systems Loral facilities in Palo Alto, California, and it incorporates advanced technology that improves satellite efficiency and customer services.
Estamos muy satisfechos de trabajar con Space System Loral en el proyecto Amazonas 5. Space System Loral es el mayor fabricante de satélites y está muy bien posicionado para responder a nuestras necesidades de innovación y crecimiento con un satélite excepcional. Como todos los satélites de Hispasat, Amazonas 5 embarca importantes tecnologías innovadoras, entre las que destaca un demostrador óptico de RF basado en tecnología fotónica que ha desarrollado Das Photonic. Con él se consigue una disminución en la masa y el volumen del satélite y se reduce la complejidad de las misiones multihaz como la del Amazonas 5. El uso de este tipo de tecnologías podrá suponer para los futuros satélites una mejora significativa en el coste y la eficiencia de su capacidad de comunicación.
In addition to Das Photonics, Spanish industry has played an important role in the Amazonas 5 project, which confirms Hispasat's commitment to the Spanish aerospace sector. Amazonas 5. More Latin America. More Hispasat.
Okay, now John will take us to the launch of Amazonas 5 aboard ILS Proton.
As Amazonas 5 awaits liftoff aboard the ILS Proton at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, we're all thinking the impressive amount of work and effort by ILS and our partners at Hispasat, SSL, and Khrunichev, from conception to design to manufacture to launch and finally into commercial service. This is a large-scale operation involving precision planning and detailed execution by the entire team. Longtime ILS program director Russ Paitula is in the underground bunker near Pad 39, and in my earpiece,
There's
giving me
an
live
underground
updates from
bunker.
Baikonur is Judy Opp, ILS program integrator.
So
Hi, Judy.
Hi, John. How are you tonight?
Good. All reports are that systems are go for launch. For the viewers, can you tell us where all the various team members are right now?
It's a beautiful evening here, and the moon is out. The critical SSL team members and the customer personnel are in the control room.
Oh, that might mean we'll get to see the halo effect.
Monitoring the health of the satellite. Russ Paitula, the ILS program director, is with the Kernichev team in the launch
so that's
bunker.
an animation.
I'm in the communication room at
120.
92850, providing real-time updates to you and the customer on the status of the mission. All of the non-critical team members have been cleared to a safe zone and are now waiting to view the launch.
That's great, Judy. Is there anyone you want to send your greetings out to before we cut to the launch?
Well, I'd like to say hi to all of our friends and family, and especially to my mom in Arizona.
Great. Stay safe, Judy. Okay, now let's get together.
Well,
and
if
watch,
that thing explodes and sends poisonous fumes everywhere, well, let's hope the bunker does its job. Let's just leave it at that.
1 minute, 40 seconds.
As Judy mentioned, it's a beautiful night there. Very
Did
clear.
it
They said
120.
Good view of the moon.
One minute, 20 seconds.
About a minute from launch. Still, we should be able to see the vehicle go pretty far downrange this clear night. Probably might even be able to see third stage ignition. If not on our video, at least the teams in Baikonur will be able to do that.
I mean, I hope we will. That would be very cool. And ignition.
Yep, and we have ignition. And liftoff of an ILS Proton launch
He
vehicle.
seemed just as
with the
surprised as I was.
Satellite on board.
So that was hilarious. It's like, I'm like, oh,
About
the engine's
10
around.
minutes
I
after
reacted
liftoff, the
quicker.
launch vehicle performs a roll maneuver to align the launch vehicle pitch axis with the planned northeasterly launch.
There's a
azimuth.
lot of little bits of things on fire. Not sure if that's normal. I don't know. I haven't seen a Proton launch in a while.
Now, the vehicle will soon experience maximum dynamic pressure, or
If
max
not,
Q,
well, we're going to see a
which is
pretty
when
big
the aerodynamic force on the vehicle has peaked. For Proton, max Q occurs about 62 seconds after liftoff at a velocity of Mach 1.6.
I was about to say that Russian...
Physical condensation that appears to be a stream of smoke can be observed if conditions are favorable. We're about 50 seconds from liftoff, so we might be able to see that at this point in about 5 seconds. There you go.
There's the condensation he's on about.
So we're at T plus 1 minute.
The vehicle is transonic at this
Beautiful
point.
shot there of the 6 of stage 1 engines, creating a halo effect with the light on the lens of the camera.
Now, the Proton uses a hot staging, which means they ignite the second stage before they separate the first.
Everything
Proton
seems
is
to be proceeding
originally a
nominally as the
two-stage
vehicle
launch
ascends over the cosmodrome in a northeasterly direction into a suborbital trajectory along the route which provides a parking orbit inclination of 51.6 degrees. Plus a little over 90 seconds from launch. Everything's nominal at this point.
How much longer until
See the stars in the background. Beautiful shot there.
So that's the thing.
Now we're coming up on the first stage separation from the second stage that is set to occur at 2 minutes into the flight. In order to maintain a constant level of acceleration, the second stage engines actually ignite prior to the
There you go, that
stage.
was beautiful. Yeah, you can see...
On a clear day, launch site observers may be able to see a halo effect as the second stage engines ignite.
You can see the first
we have a
stage
confirmation of
trailing
ignition of
behind
the second
stage
and a good separation from the first stage.
It
You
was-
can see stage 1 falling behind there as the
You
second
can,
stage
you can
continues
see
to
it
fire,
occasionally getting hit by the plume
moving
of the
the
second stage.
Proton upper stages and the spacecraft into farther downrange. We have confirmation of the planned level of thrust on all 4 second stage engines. Now the second stage will operate for about 3 minutes and 26 seconds. That'll take us to a little over 5.5 minutes, or a little under 5.5 minutes from launch.
You can see it appears that the little dot that is the first stage, which was in that area there, It looks like it's
the next key
overtaking
mission milestone is the separation of the third stage from the second stage at L plus 5 minutes and 27 seconds. About 20 seconds into the third stage operation, the density of the atmosphere at the altitude is lower, so the payload fairing can be jettisoned.
Just to have less weight pushing.
As the mission proceeds, the launch vehicle travels from Kazakhstan into Russian territory, and our viewers may notice some brief planned delays in our reporting of key mission milestones, as the telemetry has to be relayed through multiple ground stations and facilities.
The first burn of the BRIESM upper stage is scheduled for completion about 16 minutes into the flight. Our live coverage will conclude shortly afterwards, with mission updates posted to the ILS website, Facebook, and Twitter pages thereafter. Amazonas 5 is a high-throughput satellite designed to provide broadband services in South America, Central America, and Mexico. The spacecraft, based on SSL's 1300 bus, will be located at the 61 degrees west orbital slot. Located in the heart of Silicon Valley, SSL is a world-leading provider of innovative satellites and spacecraft systems. SSL satellites connect billions of people around the world, providing essential communication services such as internet connectivity, Ultra HD television delivered directly to homes, and mobile communications for ships and planes. Here's a little bit more about SSL and the performance, power, and reliability of the Amazonas 5 satellite.
State-of-the-art technology. I'm going to become an ad man for this. Advanced capability for multiple missions. SSL, leader in reliability, performance, and innovation in space. Space! Yeah, I'm tired. Partnering in innovation. Growing Hispasat's video neighborhood in Latin America. Delivering fast and affordable broadband. SSL. Hispasat.
John, as Chris Fleischer mentioned earlier, the Proton is one vehicle, but ILS has many other vehicles. Can you go into a little more detail about those?
Yeah, sure. ILS has the exclusive commercial rights to market the Angara 1.2 for low Earth orbit missions out of the Plesetsk Cosmodrome in northern Russia. And as Kirk said, ILS contracted for a dual launch capability on Proton BRIESM, the launch vehicle used today for Amazonas 5 in Baikonur. And last fall, we introduced the commercial Proton Medium, with a customer already under contract for that two-stage vehicle. The Proton Medium was the clean-chip response to the evolving launch market to provide launch service capability to the mid-range mass properties of communication satellites. Many satellite operators are now building all-electric or hybrid, which is a mix of chemical and electric propulsion, satellites for operations. This is due to the maturity and reliability of the electric propulsion systems that have been developed in recent years. As many might not be aware, the usual limiting element of a lifetime of a satellite is not breakdown of critical equipment, but rather simply running out of gas, or in this case, fuel. Once a satellite is in its operating slot, though, electric propulsion, which has a lower specific impulse or thrust, can be used to maintain station keeping and allow more lifetime, since it does not require the mass of a chemical propellant system. The downside? Electric propulsion thrust is very, very low, so getting the satellite into this final orbiting slot can take months. That's why some operators have used the hybrid satellite approach. The overall goal of the Proton Medium was to reduce price and performance to match the projected demand by the market. We are currently working with many potential customers for future launch services using this vehicle.
Could you perhaps
and since I got my last update from Judy, she said that we did have a successful separation of the stage 2 to 3. Stage 3 is now operating nominally, and we also have confirmation of the payload fairing jettison. Now that jettison occurs at a velocity of about 4,600 meters per second, or about 2.9 miles per second, and it's at an altitude of 138 kilometers. Our next major milestone happens in a few minutes. That will be the separation of the Proton's third stage from the BRIESM upper stage.
We've talked about it a little today, and we've given some of our viewers a baseline knowledge of the ILS Proton. Now let's take an in-depth look at the mainstay Proton launch vehicle. The total height of an ILS Proton is between 184 and 191 feet, around the same height as a 19-story building. Its gross liftoff weight can be around 705,000 kilograms or 1,554,000 pounds, depending on payload and fuel weights. Proton's initial launch was on July 16, 1965, with the Proton 1 spacecraft. If we begin our in-depth look at the Proton in a manner chronologically consistent with the launch phases, we see that the first stage consists of a central tank containing the oxidizer tank, surrounded by 6 fuel tanks. Each fuel tank also carries one of 6 RD-276 engines that provide first stage power. Total first stage vacuum-rated level thrust is 11 meganewtons, or 2.5 million pounds of force.
That's a lot!
The second stage is a conventional cylindrical design, and it's powered by 3 RD-210 engines plus 1 RD-211 engine. It develops a vacuum thrust of 2.4 meganewtons, or 540,000 pounds of force. The third stage is powered by 1 RD-213 engine and develops thrust of 583 kilonewtons, or 131,000 pounds of force. It has a 4-nozzle Vernier engine that produces thrust of 31 kilonewtons, or 7,000 pounds of force. Guidance, navigation, and control of the Proton M during operation of the first 3 stages is carried out by a triple redundant closed-loop digital avionics system mounted in the Proton's third stage. The BreezeM upper stage is powered by 1 pump-fed gimbaled main engine that develops thrust of 20 kilonewtons, or 4,500 pounds of force. It is composed of a central core and an auxiliary propellant tank, which is jettisoned in flight following depletion. The BreezeM control system includes an onboard computer, a 3-axis gyro-stabilized platform, and a navigation system. Finally, the payload fairing. It consists of 2 symmetrical payload fairing halves and a static envelope diameter of up to 3.87 meters. There are multiple payload fairing designs presently qualified for flight, including standard commercial payload fairings developed specifically to meet the needs of ILS customers. The payload fairing for commercial launches aboard an ILS Proton separates at the nose cone in a planned maneuver, leaving the BreezeM and the spacecraft together, known as the orbital unit, to continue the journey to its planned orbit. That's an at-a-glance look at the Proton and its stages.
So the last time we spoke, we did achieve stage 3 shutdown and separation of the BreezeM and the Amazonas 5 spacecraft, which now BreezeM now takes over the rest of the mission.
Thank you, John. As John said, the BreezeM upper stage is designed for injecting payloads into a low, medium, or geosynchronous orbits. The main engine can be restarted up to 8 times during flight and allows precision injection of the spacecraft into the target orbit. Let's learn more about the Proton's technology and its role in the Amazonas 5 mission now.
Soon we will have stage 3 separation from the BreezeM.
That has already
the orbital
happened.
unit, or the spacecraft together with the adapter, separation system, and BreezeM, will be traveling at approximately 7,300 meters per second at the moment of separation, or more than 16,000 miles per hour. The BreezeM will ignite for its first burn about 1.5 minutes later and will last about 4.5 minutes. About 4 minutes after the first main engine cutoff, or MECO 1, the vehicle is scheduled to go out of range of our ground tracking stations. After about 70 minutes, we will reacquire the signal prior to the second burn of the BreezeM.
ILS announced around this time last fall the introduction of the Proton variants, the two-stage vehicles to serve the mid-range mass properties of
Proton medium,
communication
she
satellites.
means.
We have our first customer under contract for Proton Medium, and the development plan is moving along. In addition to this new launch capability, ILS President Kirk Peischer talks about some of the additional competitive ILS product offerings.
Proton has had the capability to launch dual satellites for years. In fact, the federal government has been using Proton's capability to launch dual spacecraft regularly. So one of the first commercial dual launches occurred in 2011, where the SES-3 satellite was paired with the COSAC-2 federal program, and that was a commercial federal dual launch. The first full commercial dual launch will actually occur in the fourth quarter of 2018 with the Eutelsat 5 West B satellite paired with the orbital ATK MEV-1 satellite. The 5-meter fairing is a strategic benefit for the Proton vehicle, and it will allow us to really address the full market potential from the big high-throughput satellites that want large antennas and reflectors on it, to dual launch capability, to the LEO constellations, and being able to optimize the number of satellites launched for those constellations. So the 5-meter fairing really opens up a whole new competitive prospectus for us, and will actually benefit ILS and will benefit our customers by providing them a very cost-effective and reliable solution for achieving their mission objectives. The 5-meter fairing will be available on both our Proton M BreezeM and our Proton Medium vehicle.
Okay, at this point in the mission, the BreezeM is separated from Proton's third stage, and we're waiting for the confirmation that has the BreezeM started its main stage. So, John, what can you tell us about the mission status?
Well, I'm happy to report that I got confirmation that the first of the 5 BreezeM burns has started, and this will put the orbital unit into a parking orbit, which we will then use to move to various other orbits over the rest of the 9-hour mission. The mission is proceeding as planned. The vehicle has completed its ascent mission. Now the BreezeM is going to begin the journey to deliver Amazonas 5 to the planned separation point at an apogee at the geostationary orbit altitude.
John, while we wait for confirmation of our last televised mission milestone, MECO-1, we often get questions about ILS, the ILS Proton, and our launch operations. So here goes the first question. ILS has 2 campaigns being conducted simultaneously, Amazonas 5 and AsiaSat 9, following a successful Proton launch on August 17th. So how does ILS and Khrunichev manage these missions so close together?
Well, ILS President Kirk Peischer touched on this a bit earlier, but I'd like to expand on his remarks. As you can imagine, conducting dual or overlapping launch campaigns requires the teams to work together to meet all the requirements of both campaigns. This requires excellent communications, flexibility to cope with ever-changing schedules, and a spirit of cooperation by all parties. About 10 years ago, ILS and Khrunichev expanded our capabilities in Baikonur to accommodate 2 teams by creating a second spacecraft processing facility for standalone testing, as well as refurbishing an additional hotel and creating new operational procedures to ensure the health, safety, and security of both teams. This has enabled us to increase our launch tempo to as little as 2.5 weeks between ILS launches.
So another question about the payload fairing. What is its purpose?
The payload fairing is the lead part of the rocket, and it's designed to protect the satellite from the environments both before and during launch. And prior to launch, it provides some protection from the elements and allows us to maintain the thermal, cleanliness, and humidity requirements of the satellite. At Proton ignition, it protects the satellite from the acoustic forces from the 6 powerful Stage 1 engines. During the first few minutes of the ascent, the rocket is accelerating through the lower atmosphere. Aerodynamic forces are created by the acceleration of the Proton through the atmosphere that could damage the satellite if it was not protected. Think about driving in your family car and having a side window open. As the car goes faster, the air force through the window becomes stronger and stronger. And the same concept applies here, except the speeds are so much higher and the forces are tremendous. In addition, at these higher speeds, the friction of the air molecules actually creates a heating effect on any unprotected surface and can damage a satellite that's really designed to operate in the vacuum of space. After the rocket reaches a higher altitude, the atmosphere is substantially thinner and the forces and the heating is greatly reduced. So we can jettison the fairing during the Stage 3 flight and reduce our mass by roughly 2,000 kilograms.
John, one of the questions we often get about the Proton missions is what occurs after separation with respect to the satellite.
After spacecraft separation, Hispasat and SSL will take over operation of the satellite. The spacecraft will execute a series of planned operations which include solar array deployment, reflector deployment, and a series of apogee engine firings. These series of firings of the satellite engine will bring the orbit inclination down to 0 degrees and raise perigee to match the apogee, resulting in a circular geostationary orbit over the equator. Following a period of in-orbit testing, the spacecraft will be positioned and placed into commercial service at the orbital slot of 61 degrees west longitude and begin to operate and provide additional Ka and Ku band capacity to Hispasat customers.
Okay, we're now at the point in the mission where the BreezeM upper stage has completed its first burn. 4 more BreezeM burns for a total of 5 are required before spacecraft's separation. So John, what is the current status of the mission?
So I just got confirmation that the first of the 5 BRIESM burns has completed successfully, and we're currently out of view, and we will not be receiving telemetry until it comes back into view in about an hour. All telemetry reports confirm that the mission is proceeding as planned, and everything's nominal as it moves along the planned flight path. So far, so good.
So this is the point where our live coverage of the launch of Hispasat's Amazonas 5 satellite concludes. Please continue to check back with us through ilslaunch.com, the ILS Facebook and Twitter pages for regular mission updates. I'd like to thank my co-host John Paul May for helping with the launch today, and also to thank ILS Program Director Russ Prytula and Mission Integrator Judy Opp for the mission updates from the Cosmodrome.
I'd also like to thank and recognize the rest of the ILS team in Baikonur, and that includes Mission Manager Chris DiGilio and Director of Launch Operations Kevin Sloan. Safe travels home for those departing, and a safe launch campaign for those staying to support the launch of AsiaSat 9.
So to all of the teams working on the Amazonas 5 mission and to our partners and customers around the world, we thank you for watching along with us.
So that was launch of Amazonas 5 at top an ILS proton on Boston 25.